This is the Economic Club of Florida, a distinguished platform for discussion of the major national issues of the day. On today's program, former Florida Lieutenant Governor Jeff Kottkamp on the vision and mission for the future of the space industry in Florida.
Bringing SpaceX was the beginning of something really exciting here in Florida. Now we see Blue Origin and a whole host of other companies also in the commercial space business, and Florida is the place for commercial space launch in the world.
Good day and welcome to the 540th in our series of distinguished speaker programs. I'm Harvey Bennett for the Economic Club of Florida. If you like space and the promise of space travel and the economic impact it's having here on Earth and right here in Florida, then you'll especially like today's program. We're honored to have with us the former Lieutenant Governor of the state of Florida, Jeff Kottkamp. When he was in office, he presided over Space Florida, the public-private partnership that has since drawn the likes of SpaceX and other commercial space flight operators to our Cape Canaveral. Jeff, welcome.
Great to be with you.
So, roughly about 10 years ago, Space Florida broke ground on a space exploration technology center. And boy, what a difference that's made to what's happening on the Cape today.
It is exciting to see our mission and our vision for the future of space in Florida really blossoming now. What happened was the Obama administration canceled the Constellation Program. It was our initial mission to Mars, and this required us to really rethink how we were going to do space in Florida. So I flew to Colorado Springs, met with Air Force Command, and we laid out this vision for commercial space and asked them if they would consider letting us convert a number of launch complexes for the use of commercial space. They were great and agreed to do that, and the first company that we really talked to was SpaceX and Elon Musk, and he had an idea in his head that he could do these things with some cost savings, as we've seen from this amazing engineering where they can reuse the first stage of a rocket, and that's really where he gets his savings. But bringing SpaceX was the beginning of something really exciting here in Florida. Now we see Blue Origin and a whole host of other companies also in the commercial space business, and Florida is the place for commercial space launch in the world.
And that's an example where the government needed to respond because our shuttle program was ending its term. And we were facing empty space, empty facilities, loss of jobs here in Florida at the time.
Yeah, the Space Coast got hit about as hard as anybody after the Great Recession. Not just because of foreclosures and all the rest, but yes, we were losing the space program.
Now, you're going to discuss more than just our space industry here in Florida during your upcoming address to the Economic Club. You're going to broaden it. There's some other growing economic sectors, aren't there, right now?
Well, we really, again, it kind of coincides with this transformation of the space program. We started to see and continue to see the development of biotech and life sciences sectors in Florida. It's really exciting to see when you start charting what's happening. I know FSU just signed a deal for research with the Mayo Clinic. You look at the Alzheimer's research at the University of South Florida. You look at gene research down in the University of Miami, Max Planck Research Institute that we brought, and of course Shan, some of the research going on. Just an example with Parkinson's patients where they've injected stem cells into the brains of Parkinson's patients and not only stop the advancement of the disease, but in some cases actually reversed it. It's enormously exciting. And when you chart this, you see that now Florida has developed its own research triangle in biotech and life sciences. Tremendous transformation in the economy.
Since leaving office, you've continued your public policy experience as a private sector legislative government relations person. Do you miss being an elected official?
Fortunately for what I do, I practice law, particularly constitutional law, try to help people navigate the legislative process, the governor's office, economic development. I'm enormously busy. I have a son that's still in high school, and over the years I've been able to coach basketball and coach baseball and just be very active. So I'm able to fill that void because you're right, I'm a policy guy. I love policy. And because I still work over at the Capitol a great deal of the time, I get to still be engaged in policy, and I enjoy that enormously.
That's terrific. Jeff Kottkamp, thank you. We look forward to hearing your formal remarks and learning more about the transformation of Florida's economy. Now, here's Cindy O'Connell, our chair of the Economic Club of Florida and director of the Florida Prepaid College Foundation, with our formal introduction.
Now, it's my pleasure, my great pleasure, to introduce Jeff Kottkamp. There's so much to talk about when you say the word and the name Jeff Kottkamp. To put it mildly, he cares so deeply about the citizens of the state of Florida and continues to demonstrate this in all he does every day. Lieutenant Governor Kottkamp was elected to the Florida House of Representatives in 2000, where he served for 3 terms. While in the House, he served as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, chairman of the Judicial Appropriations Committee, chairman of the Government Operations Committee, vice chairman of Rules, and was deputy majority whip. In November of 2006, he was elected as the 17th Lieutenant Governor of Florida. In that capacity, he oversaw the Governor's Office of Drug Control, the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, the Office of Adoption and Child Protection, and the Governor's Office of Film and Entertainment. Lieutenant Governor Kottkamp also served as the chairman of Florida's Children and Youth Cabinet, chairman of Space Florida Board of Directors, which maybe will tell us a little bit about what's going on with that industry today, and chairman of the Florida Sports Foundation. On June 18, 2008, he served as the acting governor of the state of Florida. Currently, Jeff Kottkamp is president of Jeff Kottkamp, PA, and has been licensed to practice law for over 30 years. His practice focuses on legislative and governmental affairs and constitutional law. Governor Kottkamp has served as an adjunct professor at the Florida State University and Florida State University College of Law, and Tallahassee Community College, teaching ethics and professional responsibility. He and his wife, Cindy, have been married for 26 years. They have one son, Jackson, who is age 16. Please join me in giving Lieutenant Governor Kottkamp an Economic Club Florida welcome.
Thank you so much. It is great to be here, great to be amongst so many friends. It's always fun to be introduced as a former lieutenant governor because it gives me a chance to tell you my favorite lieutenant governor story. I was at the Republican National Convention. Cindy was there, and I had met a lot of people from around the country. I was standing on the floor of the convention hall, and I saw Dave Barry walking towards the Florida delegation. I thought, that's great. I've never met him. I'd love to talk to him. So I walked up to Dave Barry. If you don't know, he's a humorist, a columnist for the Miami Herald, a very funny guy. So I introduced myself and said, hi, Dave. I just wanted to meet you. My name is Jeff Kottkamp, the Lieutenant Governor of Florida. And he looked at me and cocked his head and said, we have a Lieutenant Governor in Florida? I was like, yeah, I'm the Lieutenant Governor. He says, well, how do I know that? Anybody could say they're Lieutenant Governor. I said, well, I chair Space Florida. I oversee the Office of Drug Control. I'm going through all this stuff I'm doing. And about that time, a guy I knew from the Rudy Giuliani campaign, Anthony Carbonelli, walks up. And I said, hey, Anthony, I'd like you to meet this guy. And Dave Barry puts out his hand and says, hi, I'm Dave Barry, the Lieutenant Governor of Indiana. And Anthony says, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. And Dave Barry says, hey, this really works. So give it a shot. It might work. It's great to be at the Economic Club because I've always loved economics. I remember in college not only studying, that's when Milton Friedman came out with Free to Choose. And that really, I got it when I started reading Free to Choose. But if you know, in that book, he really introduces a lot of people to Adam Smith. And Adam Smith in 1776 came out with this radical concept of allowing the free hand of the market dictate how the economy worked. instead of the strong arm of government. It was really a radical way of thinking. It's also an amazing coincidence that the same year the Declaration of Independence came out with this other transformational, radical idea that everyone's equal, that every man, woman, and child has certain natural rights, and that those rights aren't given to us by government, they're granted to us by God. And to put in our founding documents that government's not the master, it's the servant, and it only has that power which we, the people, give it. What a time for these radical concepts to come out. It really did transform the way that people thought about government, thought about the economy, thought about how to live their life. And so when you think about this kind of transformational change, we certainly started to see that transformation in our economy here in Florida. I want to talk a little bit about that, but before I do, I think it's important to realize where we are in the world today. It's a far, far different world than just 20 years ago. This is a global, borderless, knowledge-based economy now. And most of us are familiar with the challenges that we face as a country with China, both economically and militarily. But not that many people realize that in a few short years, India will actually be the #1 English-speaking country in the world. They'll have more people in India speaking English than in our country. And if you take the top 25% of India's population with the highest IQ, it exceeds our population. Well, what does that mean? It means that they have more smart kids than we have kids. And this is the world economy that we find our children in. If you look at the top 10 jobs that will exist in 2030, most likely none of them exist today. The same thing happened over the last couple of decades. So we have to understand this global economy. We have to realize as well that our children are our future workforce, and so they have to be given the tools to compete in this new economy. And I've thought a lot about this, about how we deal with this with our colleges and universities, and I really believe we need to incentivize our degrees. If we're going to need computer scientists and engineers and nurses and all the rest, then shouldn't our degrees try to make that happen by incentivizing the degrees that we really need to fill the workforce? Now, jumping into the economy here in Florida, everybody here knows that historically this has been an agricultural and then a tourism state. It's remarkable. Pre-COVID, we were up to 120 million visitors a year. That's 5 times our population. So obviously tourism will always be a part of our economy, the service sector, but those aren't exactly high-paying jobs. And as you look at really the future, we started a transformation. We're right in the middle of it now, and we've really transformed this economy into aerospace, biotech and life sciences, and to a lesser extent, renewable energy. Now, the first thing I think I would want to talk about in aerospace is, obviously, we've had an amazing 60-year history of space in Florida. But something really dramatic happened when President Obama canceled the Constellation Program. This was our initial program to go to Mars. And when he canceled it, and at the same time we were canceling the space shuttle program, that meant we, the greatest economic military power in the world, had to hitch a ride to put somebody into space. That's really remarkable. By the way, you realize how important that space exploration is to the economy. We have about 3,000 products we all use each day that were initially designed for the space program. And so when you explore in space, you drive innovation, you drive new technology, and that really helps grow the economy. So realizing when we still had Constellation, it was going to be about 6 months to Mars, 6 months back. And they came to the conclusion at the Life Science Center at Kennedy that the astronauts were going to have to grow some of their own food, so fruits and vegetables for the trip there and the trip back. And they started manipulating the plants with LED lights, and they were able to increase the size of the fruits and vegetables and the output of the plants just by manipulating the lights. And then they did something really remarkable. By changing the color of the LED lights, they were able to increase the antioxidants in the plants by 40%. And it occurred to me it wouldn't be that long from now that we would do the same thing in our offices and our homes and the places we meet. By just changing the color of the lights, we'll be able to improve our health. Now, if that's not wild, I mean, that's just the kind of thing that happens, and it all started because they're trying to figure out how do we make sure the astronauts have food when we go to Mars. Well, once Constellation was canceled, then we had to retool, and our goal was to make Florida the place for commercial space. Before we could really make that happen, though, we had to have launch complexes to offer to commercial space. So I flew to Colorado Springs and met with a General Kaler who oversaw the Air Force Space Command, and we laid out this plan. We would like to take these launch complexes, 2 or 3 of them, and convert them for commercial space. But beyond that, we would like to allow the launch complexes to be versatile enough to handle more than one size of a rocket, because up until that time, it was basically one rocket per launch complex. To the credit of the Air Force, they got it. They really did. And they were a great partner with us to convert these launch complexes. And then the first one, the first real effort, was to talk with Elon Musk and SpaceX and make sure they got to Florida. And he's a very interesting guy. He had just sold PayPal for over $1 billion. I always envision him sitting in a recliner in his living room with stacks of money everywhere and think, now what do I do? I'll build rockets. Well, he had an amazing vision for commercial space. He realized, the reason NASA doesn't have a lot of accidents is because they have so many overlapping safety features to make sure we keep people safe. Well, that's a little bit harder to do in the commercial arena, but Elon's idea was really remarkable, and we've seen it come to fruition. He thought, if I could reuse part of a rocket, I might be able to shave 30 or 40% off the cost of a launch. And so they have figured out how to land the first stage of their rockets back on a landing pad. It's amazing engineering, but it worked. The second thing we really had to do for him, to make this work, he needed to land the contract for delivering payloads to the International Space Station. It was about $1.2 billion or thereabouts. And so obviously we couldn't make it happen, but we certainly did everything we could to encourage that decision. And fortunately, he got the contract, and now he's just taken off. Not only getting the Falcon 9 in space, that I don't know if you saw the new ship for humans. I mean, it's just amazing technology, and so I'm really proud of what he's done, and what that has also done is obviously brought more commercial space to Florida. So now you see Blue Origin. I talked to Virgin Galactic. They were going to do space tourism, about $200,000 per person to go into space. And they wanted to go to New Mexico because the weather was so predictable. And I really made the best pitch I could. I said, well, these people are paying $200,000 already. Don't you think they would rather do a 3-day package in Florida where they could go to the best hotels and best beaches and Disney World? And they get to launch where Neil Armstrong launched. I made my best pitch. They were a little stubborn about it. But it's been really remarkable. And so over this decade, we continue to see aerospace grow in Florida, truly transforming the economy in that arena. I mean, it is remarkable. We already were the leader for launch in the government world, but now we see ourselves the leader in the commercial space because we had the vision to do it. And that will continue. They continue to bring, just 2 weeks ago, they signed a deal for this Ariane supersonic to move to the Space Coast, and they're building a private commercial plane that flies at 1,078 miles an hour, so that's pretty cool. That'll speed up the trip to D.C. But that's aerospace. So you see, it is a long way away from back when it was just the Apollo program. Now it's private enterprise. This is something that really interests like pharmaceutical companies. Any opportunity in the research world to get in zero gravity to do research, because you really speed up the process. And so I think the next thing, and we had talked to a guy by name Bigelow out of Las Vegas. He wanted to do a private space station for that very reason, to rent space, particularly to pharmaceuticals. And I think we'll see that next. That kind of blends into another area that has really been a transformation in Florida, and that's biotech and life sciences. My introduction to how this was growing, I went to the Medica conference in Dusseldorf. It's the world's largest medical device and equipment conference. And we had a pavilion there with 30 or 40 companies from Florida. And it's amazing how it was such trench warfare. At one point, one of the CEOs said, "Come back here, I want to show you something." And he brought me away from his display cases, opened a drawer and said, "See this? These are our real products that we show potential customers. What's in the shelves out there are things that we know people are going to copy." And so they put out dummy equipment for people to copy the wrong thing. You may remember when Governor Bush brought Scripps here, and that seemed like a big deal. But if you look at what's happening now, Florida State just signed a research deal with the Mayo Clinic. You look at the medical city that we've developed in Orlando, down in University of Miami, hired away some of the top gene research scientists in the world from Duke and brought them to Miami. Then we have just up the road, Scripps, Torrey Pines. We have Max Planck, who I signed the deal with in Munich. USF, cutting edge research in Alzheimer's. Shands, Gainesville, they've actually injected the brains of Parkinson's patients with stem cells, and in some cases not only stopped the advancement of the disease, but reversed it. And you think about that kind of research, and you chart this out, and you see that we've transformed our economy in that lane as well. We have our own research triangle in Florida with cutting-edge medical research, second to none, and it's really exciting to see. And then I guess the other area I would mention, and Mr. Micah, we're going to see what happens with this administration and energy. We certainly have a place at the table for renewable energy as we talk about transforming this economy in Florida, and we had a start. Obviously, as a Sunshine State, we should be the leader in solar, and we're slowly doing that. We've also done some wind and some wave and biofuels, but then we became energy independent, and now who knows what's going to happen with energy. But I think that is an emerging area for us to really get an even stronger foothold in, especially as solar has really started to blossom into an exciting renewable energy. So when you look at all this, and then you put it in perspective about the changing world that I mentioned and the world we find ourselves, it's really timely to be transforming into these high-wage, high-tech, 21st century jobs. I still can't believe that right here in Tallahassee, we aren't more competitive to bring research and high-tech jobs. We have everything to offer in Tallahassee. Every place I went around the world to talk about Florida and bring businesses to Florida, they already knew we had great weather and low taxes. The same question every single time was workforce. Where are we going to get the workers? In Tallahassee, you have a state college that can very rapidly develop a particular curriculum for one part of your workforce. We have 2 universities. We have a great public school system. And we have, low tax. There's no reason that we shouldn't be more assertive and successful in economic development right here in Tallahassee because we have so much to offer. But as I think about this transformation, I get excited about it because what it does for the standard of living, when you start bringing in these high-wage, high-tech jobs, you increase the standard of living, you increase the ability of the state to do so many more things and just make the state even better than it is. And it also makes us just not a major economic player in the country, but in the world. And we will continue to do that as we continue to grow. So I'm excited for the future of Florida, and I appreciate you having me today. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to do that. But thank you for having me today.
Questions from the audience? Emily.
Okay, when you said, workforce is an issue, and, why we can't do more in Tallahassee, what do you think, should our local government be doing something? What do you think is the solution to that?
I can't say that I'm familiar with their day-to-day efforts in this. All I know is if I put this on a piece of paper, the assets that we bring to the table for a community like this, when you realize that workforce is typically going to be the number one question, and we can develop pipelines of workers. You just tell us what the major is you need. We can do it. We've got, like I said, we've got the higher education. So maybe it's just a matter of realizing that where you start with this is workforce. That's when you realize the conversation you're actually going to have isn't going to necessarily, the incentives are nice, but there's a whole lot of other things that come into play. Quality of life for the management team. They're going to be happy that we don't have a state income tax and all the like. But really, the workforce question is we can do that. Look at we've got the ability.
I got a question. With what's going on with, of course, our recent election, of course, I can talk all day long about that. Texas has just come up with a suggestion of succeeding from the Union just because of concern from the invasion of their borders. Of course, we can have invasion here too. Luckily, we do have a lot of water around us, but it's still like 90 miles away. What is Florida's stance on maybe considering its accession to the Union if something should happen in that direction?
Well, I don't speak for the state of Florida, but I'm frankly kind of like this country, and I'd like to stay a part of it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Governor, thank you for your comments this morning or this afternoon. One of the things that you talked about was workforce, and so if you look at the statistics, about 60% of all college students take psychology degrees. I'm not sure that's helping our psyche any, but the point I guess I'm trying to make is how do we incentivize students to go into the degrees where there's going to be future job opportunities? Do you think it's making it, giving them some financial incentives to do that, maybe also increasing the opportunities to earn credits while you're in the AB schools and degrees in high school and stuff so that you're already prepared and moving forward? So I think you're absolutely right. We need to remain we need to go in the direction of high tech. So.
Yeah, good question, Barney. And the obvious answer to that is if you want to major in engineering or be a scientist or whatever the workforce need we're trying to incentivize, then the tuition should be less for that degree. And if you want a psychology degree, that's great, but it may cost more. That's okay. But that's how I would do it. It just makes sense. You're just kind of steering folks in that direction. And that's really how, economic development is a continuum. It starts in pre-K. The importance of pre-K to third grade cannot be overstated. It's hugely important to the development of children. But you're going through a continuum through the K through 12 system, the state colleges, the universities, to economic development. It's all one continuum. It's all connected. And you have to realize when you're doing economic development, it actually starts back at pre-K and kindergarten, where we need to make sure we're doing a great job. We have to fill the void for a lot of kids that show up and can't read and don't know their ABCs or anything else. And but you have to look at every single child as part of the future workforce. They're the next generation, and so you can't leave any of them behind. So it's all connected and all important. And I think on that back end, incentivizing the degrees helps you achieve your goal of making sure that you have the 200 engineers that this industry needs and the 300 computer scientists that they need.
Gentlemen, thank you for doing a great job. It's wonderful to see you.
Good to see you,
We
Christopher.
look at, we talk about the incentive for the leasing side. We see a migration that continues into Florida, and yet we see Musk, who has everything in Florida, and then he moves to Texas. How can we now look at beyond obviously the base loading of the students, but looking at industries across the globe that use the assets that you just so ably discussed to bring those technologies, those companies to Florida rather than Texas? They're leaving California, they're leaving New York. This is a wonderful place to be. I think we should focus on some of those key industries as well, shouldn't we?
Absolutely, and that's really the purpose of developing the workforce, is to become the magnet for high-tech industry. As I said, I mean, kind of the cherry on top is the no state income tax, a great place to live, the fairly affordable real estate compared to California. But it all starts with the workforce. If they have that solved, it's an enormous peace of mind to start working out the details about where to buy office space or build office space. But you've got to be able to answer that question first. But that is the goal, Christopher, to bring these high-tech industries like the new company moving from, I think they're in Las Vegas, moving to the Space Coast to build that supersonic commercial jet. Anything else? Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a great day.
You've been listening to Jeff Kottkamp, former Lieutenant Governor of Florida, speaking before the Economic Club of Florida on February 23, 2021 in Tallahassee, Florida. The Economic Club of Florida promotes interest and enlightenment on important economic, political, and social issues of the day. To learn more, including how to become a member, visit our website at economic-club.com. This program was recorded at the Governor's Club in Tallahassee, Florida.